And you're joining us live on Narrative as we're bringing you some breaking news with Lev Parnas joining us today. Hey, Lev, how are you?
Hey Zev, thank you for having me. I thought it was going to be an easy Friday. I was just getting up. Looked like it was a dead news day. I was sitting down, getting ready to write some Substack letter, and then boy, did we get a bombshell that just dropped.
It's never an easy Friday in the Trump administration. They always like to surprise us. Of course, what we're talking about is House Democrats releasing photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate showing the late sex trafficker's connections to some of the most powerful people in America. These are photos including President Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, and Richard Branson. Now, none of these are surprises, but they're just the beginning of what are 95,000 photos that have been given to the House Democrat Committee by the estate, by the Epstein estate. Earlier on, Rep. Garcia was outside the Capitol Hill just talking a little bit about what's in the rest of these, and they're it's quite a statement he makes here. Take a listen to Garcia here.
These photos were basically in the possession of the Epstein estate. And so that includes pictures that maybe were sent to Epstein. Perhaps he took himself. We know there's some that he took himself that others took, but they were in his possession. And so that is what's important. And obviously, there are photos of powerful men and folks that we want to have an opportunity to speak with and ask questions of. The thing right now that's the most important is there is one man who has the power to release the files and get to the truth and bring justice to the survivors, and that's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump right now needs to release the files to the American public so that the truth can come out and we can actually get some sense of justice for the survivors.
So what's your plan going to be if the Trump administration doesn't do this?
What do you think the significance of these photos is? Because some of these are folks we already knew had associations with Jeffrey Epstein.
I think anything that we release is significant. I think people should be able to make judgments on their own as to what they see in these photos. For us, this is about transparency. If we receive information or pictures or anything else, videos that we put out last week, and I think it's important to note that it's been oversight Democrats that have fought every single time to release all this information. And there is a White House cover-up happening right now in not releasing these files that needs to end. There are women who were raped when they were children, who just want justice. Let's release the files immediately.
What do you think is going to happen on the 19th? You know, they're supposed to put out all these files on the 19th. Do you think we're going to get everything they need? Do you think it's going to be satisfactory?
I think that the Justice Department needs to put out the files today. What happens on the 19th, I'm hopeful they put everything out. It shouldn't be heavily redacted. The file shouldn't be tampered with. We should get the full production. There are hundreds and hundreds of FBI agents that have worked on putting these files together. They know what's in them. The president himself is aware of what's in these files. They tried to stop the release. We forced the action in Congress. It's time to release the files.
You skeptical we get
What's
everything?
your plan going to be on the 19th, though, if the DOJ does not release these files?
Right now, our plan is to demand that the president release the files, and we'll see what he does on the 19th. But I think, again, these pictures, some of these photos are really disturbing. And I know we've put some out today. There are many others. And some of the other photos that we did not put out today are incredibly disturbing.
Will you subpoena the estate for
Let's stop it there. That's the last statement he made there, Lev, is really the troubling one. I mean, we've only seen 19 pictures of 95,000 that have been given now to the House Democrats. And what he said is that some of them are incredibly disturbing. Now, the ones we've seen today, the ones we're seeing alongside us now, not disturbing. But the ones that are coming, he says there are many disturbing photos in there. What's your thoughts about what's coming and what we've just seen?
I mean, as a father, as a husband, and I've very disturbed by some of the language, and obviously understanding of that we have a lot more to see, and there's some
Can you
major
get closer to the
disturbing. I mean,
microphone, actually, Lev? Is that
oh,
possible? Just so
are
we can
are
get it. No, okay,
are
that's
you?
fine. That's fine. If you've
Is,
got those on, that's
oh,
fine.
is that better?
Maybe it's just my
Oh, okay.
earphones. Keep going.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Because
that's
I
fine.
think okay, yeah, I think my headphones were I think off.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying I think there's like listen, we've been speaking about this from the very beginning,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we've spoken about that there's a lot more that's going to come out. There's a reason Donald Trump is not releasing the files. There's a reason why if you listen to what Garcia is talking about, he's saying they should be unredacted on the 19th. They should be unscrubbed. But the unfortunate part is, from if you you've watched our reporting out here, we've been telling you that first of all, others have been confirming that the scrubbing has been going on.
Mhm.
There's been over $1 million paid, and lots of FBI agents that were put on to scrub Donald Trump's name. That was back then. There's been also scrubbing going on right now, links, financial, Epstein, Russia, so much going on. So the fact that yes, they should do it, and yes, that hopefully 19th we're gonna get, but I wouldn't be so optimistic. And the other thing I would say this is I'd say is release the files. I mean, enough with these games going back and forth, and and let's not do the drips also on both sides. Like one thing Garcia said. Two things, excuse me, that really got to me, which is true. He said they could release the files today. The president of the United States doesn't have to wait till the 19th. The DOJ doesn't have to wait. We have three judges that already approved, to release the grand jury. I mean, there's nothing holding them back except them themselves not wanting to release it. But then he ended it off, and as disturbing as it was, it's also disturbing to say, why aren't you releasing it? Release those disturbing pictures.
Right.
We need to see them. Why did you release this? And now you're telling me there's a lot more. You've
Well,
seen
they
the
are intending to.
pictures.
What they're doing, they're saying, is just redacting the survivors or the
Oh,
victims
okay.
in there. So they are planning to release all of these, or at least as many as they can. That within the legal mindset. I mean, there's going to be some that I think might be quite disturbing. Obviously, there were cameras and spying equipment all over the Epstein properties. There were really Les Wexner's properties. We know that 300 gigabytes of material was seized, the various houses. So there's a lot of surveillance evidence, professional surveillance equipment systems that are designed to protect companies and surveil companies were installed in these mansions, in these homes. So they were capturing everything. They backed up everything. Now, whether all of it was seized by the FBI, we don't know. And what the Epstein estate has, I don't know why they still have it. I don't know why whether these were ever handed over to the FBI in their investigations, whether these are duplicates. We just don't know enough about these particular 95,000. But if they're disturbing
I, I,
photos in
I,
the estate files, that's interesting. That's criminal
Yeah,
evidence.
no. Well, I could tell you how it works because going through this myself, being under FBI investigation, being arrested, going through trial, and having basically a lot of the evidence a lot of the stuff you're seeing in the Epstein estate, the FBI has. There might be certain things that the FBI and the DOJ will have that the Epstein estate won't have, that was taken during the criminal investigations, and they might not have copies of. But if you as a defendant had copies of, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Like when the FBI took all my stuff, I couldn't put out things that were sealed under
Yeah.
whatever the FBI took. But if I had it, like pictures of my own, I could have done it. Like, you know what I'm saying to you. So
So are you
that's what
allowed to
saved me
keep
actually.
the evidence or copies of the evidence, or how does that work?
Well, it was the cloud actually,
Okay.
because it was see, that's the whole thing. This is the interesting part. And this is what we're going to see, because a lot of the Epstein evidence still goes back to before there was an iCloud, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is actual pictures and actual,
CDs,
say, correct.
hard
That
drives.
stuff, correct. Now,
Yeah.
that stuff we're not seeing. That's what the DOJ, that's what they have. Well, I think what we're seeing on the Epstein is stuff that he was able to keep through the cloud, through his phone, digitally, through stuff that they were able to, that they, not actual hard possession of an actual picture. Because if they took the picture, you don't, if unless you have a copy of that picture somewhere, you don't, you understand what I'm saying to you.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of computers missing from the various homes when the FBI went there. There are a lot of files that were missing, a lot of CDs that contained a lot of these photos were missing. It could be the state has stuff the FBI has never seen. That is
Could be
possible.
possible.
And it's also possible the FBI has a lot of stuff, but that has been taken because we know a lot of the evidence has been tampered with. A lot of it has disappeared. We know that from the first bust on the mansion. So we may never see the full amount of photos or the full number of photos that were taken by the FBI. But it is interesting we're seeing these. I wonder if we should go through some of these one by one here and just see
Yeah, let's
Steve
do it.
Bannon,
Interesting
the
character.
yeah, super interesting. This is the campaign chairman for President Donald Trump in the first, campaign for presidency in 2016. to see him alongside Jeffrey Epstein right the way through, as we now know, through all these Bannon emails, he was in contact with Jeffrey Epstein throughout the administration and beyond the administration. They became very good friends if they weren't before. And he was doing video interviews with him, so-called video training with Jeffrey Epstein. And here we see them in this very candid moment. And the emails that we've been going through as well with Ellie Leonard, they have a very, very close friendship, very close, Bannon and Epstein. What does that tell you?
It tells me, just validates everything we've been saying. I mean, this was, like a good old boys club that people from a certain generation think alike. Just like you see, we have white supremacists, you have other, misogynists, you have all these different people. These are powerful men with lots of money, with power that in the 80s and the 90s, went through a stage with all these young models, and all of this sexual pedophilia that is now coming back to bite a lot of them in the ass. Like you
Mhm.
saw that with the Me Too movement, with the Weinstein. You saw, with P Diddy, the stuff that's coming out. Epstein, obviously, and there's a lot. See, the difference with between those and Epstein is Epstein was a lot more than just a rich man. Epstein was connected to governments. Epstein was connected playing games in a realm that others don't play in, where he was feeding information to different governments for certain contracts for financial gains back and forth. I mean, and you yourself reported several times, I mean, that he's might have been even actually working on behalf of certain governments, to do that. So, obviously, I think we're watching a display of what we already know as a country, but seeing these actual pictures, seeing these actual powerful men, seeing Bannon, it's one thing email, but
Yeah,
now seeing Bannon, when you have that email, now you have pictures of Bannon during 2018. I mean, just think
yeah.
about it, folks. This is 2018 during the middle of his first administration. Bannon was his ex-campaign manager. He had direct insight, not just during the Mueller report. He was in there. And at these same times, right before the Helsinki meeting, you have Epstein emails also connecting Bannon with his brother when Epstein's talking about saying, did Bannon give the Russians the pictures or the information? Just think about that.
Yeah.
Think about what Bannon's role is between the Russians, the Chinese. And when you think about that, and you look back at 2018, and then you fast forward and think about what's happening now, because Bannon is still there. And think about it, Bannon is the one walking around talking about that they have a plan for 2028. So I'm just, I'm a
Such a
little
good
bit all
point.
over the place,
No,
but
no,
I
no. I
just
want
want
to
to make
a
sure.
lot of what you've said because so much of it is so important. Going back to that initial part where you were talking about what role Jeffrey Epstein played in the world, how he was involved in getting contracts, he was involved in dealing with foreign governments for those contracts. I mean, he sort of played he played a role where he could call Vladimir Putin up, and Vladimir Putin would say, "Hey, I want to meet you in St. Petersburg," and he would say no because he can be that kind of guy. That's a very close relationship, obviously. Some people say Putin was one of his clients. Um, Steve Bannon as well is an international figure. He is connected to Xi. He's connected to the to aspects of the Communist Party that they've described as a clique, but he's still part of the Communist Party. Um, and also connected to Russia. There's a lot of business dealings related to foreign entities, and when you see Bannon and Epstein in a room, I mean, you really have to look at that and think, wow, there's a real center of gravity in terms of foreign relations, and also MBS involved, Israel involved, all these other countries involved with these people too.
I mean, also that one email really stuck out to me, and I can't wait to see more because I know there's a lot of things going on with these Epstein emails. But there was one that email where going back to the Russians and where he talks to that ambassador or ex-ambassador, and he tells him about his relationship with Victor Churkin.
Yeah.
And that is very troubling because if you take a look and really understand what he's saying, is he was basically saying, and I could understand because I used to, I might have not been on the money level or the maybe as on the power, but I dealt in those same exact powerful people, powerful range, and understand
Mhm.
how that works, and to be and having a relationship with an ambassador or somebody high up, and the way you work and the way you talk. So reading through it and weaving through the words and watching how he said to him, and I'm not paraphrasing, but saying, I've given Churkin enough to take him down.
Yeah.
Those are, so that's some, that Churkin was not a regular guy. This was not like, I mean, you guys have to understand, this was the ambassador from Russia to the United Nations.
Mm.
This was somebody at that time that was extremely close to Vladimir Putin, and financial. So what I'm saying to you is, I think, and I keep talking about it, and with all these things going on, one of the biggest things I think that we're going to find out in these Epstein files that Trump is really covering, besides the association to the pedophilia, besides they're trying to disassociate and change history of the way they acted, what they did, and try to cover up on all of this, nasty things that they did. But there was also, all of it had to do with finances. All of it then later had to do with power. All of these people are still were and are, just think about, for all these decades, the most powerful men in our world, in our countries, and certain things, so there's a lot more to this, and that's why Trump, and if you connect the dots and you take a look at how he is literally kneeling down to Putin, how you take a look at the Epstein files, the one thing we never hear about in the Epstein files is Russians, oligarchy, connection to any Russian oligarchy, connection to any Russian, and that's impossible. It's impossible because, just from what I know and from the people that were around in those times with, in that world, it's impossible. So
Do you think they're
I
being
think
redacted from there? Do you think that we're not seeing it because they're being preemptively cut out, or is there something
I
less
think
sinister going on?
Well, I think it's a combination from, I think that part of it was always uh, what's it called? Not the
Covert,
cover up, not
covert,
the cover. That was the stuff that they couldn't show you because it
right,
would release, intelligence information. I
right,
think
right.
that was the
Sort of
stuff
classified.
that, classified. Yes, thank you. That's what was to be class. I think that's what the blackout, a lot of it was, that had to do with the Russians, with Churkin, because I'm sure, they were monitoring, the CIA was monitoring Churkin, and they were seeing
Yeah,
what Epstein was.
absolutely.
I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? So a lot of, because even my own case, when I was getting discovery, I remember they gave me like a stack of paperwork like this thick, and all of it was blacked out. Except for maybe like a day, or like it was impossible to read. And when we even asked, my lawyer said, what are we supposed to do with it?" They said it's national security. It's
Interesting.
classified. I couldn't even get to it.
But
So
sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. No, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I was
No,
just
I
going to
think.
ask you about this world. So you've got the Russian mob, let's call them that, who are interlaced with the with Russian intelligence services, and they are doing all sorts of business around the world. They're doing some for political use, and some for foreign favors, some for compromising people, some for getting contracts, some for buying things. You name it. There's just a lot of stuff going on between these different in these different spheres of influence. And the Russian mob is out there to make money, mostly, I would think. They're not really there for the politics, but they do the politics so they can do the crime. That's
Well,
sort of how it works.
it's a combination. They actually, it's funny to see that, like, a lot of the mobsters then got into politics.
Right. So maybe they are interested in politics.
I mean, it's a lot. They went from being mobsters, criminals, to businessmen, to all of a sudden, some are, a lot of them are politicians,
Right.
because they realized, and that's the interesting part, that you pointed out to, is because that it's a fine line between being a criminal and being a politician, and both of them have one thing in common: is you have to be is the power of, because both of those bring a lot of power with it by being in politics, because you're in control of people. Doesn't matter if it's on a lower level, where a school board, or you're the president of the United States or another
It
country.
does give you power.
Gives you power over some, by being, even if you take a look at just being sometimes a crossing guard at the it gives you power over people crossing and waiting. It gives you that, and that's why some people go towards these things.
It also
Yeah,
gives you information, and it gives you a lot of secret
information.
information that you might be able to then turn into money and all sorts of other things down the line. This is the picture of Donald Trump that came out of this batch. There's a bunch of women there with the leis on them, the Hawaiian leis. So I'm guessing this is the Hawaiian tropic photo. It's been spoken about many, many times. Michael Wolff spoke about this. I'm not sure if this is the one, but nevertheless, this is Donald Trump with the Hawaiian tropic girls. I mean, there's nothing surprising. This is Donald Trump. There's always, this is kind of the kind of photos he would be have, but there's nothing criminal here. There's nothing upsetting here. It's just a photo in black and white. Looks like maybe it's even taken out of a newspaper. It may not even be the thing. There are some others here that look much more intimate. There's Charles and Bill Gates. And there's lots. I'm sorry, Andrew and Bill Gates. And there's lots to be discovered in that relationship between Bill Gates and Epstein. I don't think we've uncovered very much of that yet. But Andrew, of course, has lost his crown or lost his crown title, and he's no longer the prince because of this Epstein fallout. And a couple of more pictures here that are just worthy of our looking through here. Here's Bill Gates again with this is Epstein's pilot. This is I think this is Epstein's plane, if I'm not mistaken. It could be the Trump plane, but it's the Lolita Express otherwise, I think, or potentially that. Here's Bannon again with Woody Allen. Woody Allen is a classic figure.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say Woody Allen's all over the place.
He is was really good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He was at almost every dinner party. Bannon was there. Andrew was there. Ellie Leonard was talking about this yesterday. And Woody Allen would show up all the time. For someone who's involved in a pedophile scandal, you think it is not the kind of person you'd invite to your home for a dinner party or want to be seen with. But there you go. He was. Here's Donald Trump again with this is a face that's been redacted, suggesting perhaps the person is a survivor or a victim of Epstein's network. And that is interesting.
Well, I was going to say to you that you're 100% thing out of those, most of those pictures, that picture is one that really I think is the most interesting one because, like you said, the one with the Hawaiian tropics, it looks like it could have been, out of, just a newspaper. We know he sponsored a lot of that. Donald Trump during the 80s and 90s considered himself a playboy. That's why he's married so many times, always had the pageants, so that's like I said, that's nothing here. But this one, for them to black out her face, that means she obviously is either somebody said Pam Bondi lookalike, she has blonde hair, so I don't know if that's I don't think they wouldn't have blacked out. I don't think if it was Pam Bondi, but I think that's a tell that she must be either a victim or a survivor or somebody if they're holding her because otherwise why would they if she was just somebody like that had nothing to do with black. They're not blacking out everybody's faces, obviously.
Yeah. It's really interesting. These women were sometimes willing participants in a prostitution ring as well. I mean, they were sent out by Epstein to gather information a lot of the time. He said, I published a story about the algorithm that he had on his blackboard the other day, and in that you can see he talks about having plants, which I took as being these women who he would put in these powerful positions, sphere of influence, and they would spy. They would gather information for
Zev,
personal information and other information.
You're so right, Zev, and a lot of people are. That's something I'm working on. Also, I'm getting information now that once I get some confirmed stuff, I think me and you'll do it together breaking because you're 100% right with that. And it wasn't so much Epstein grooming some of them because when you hear that you say that, people right away think that he was getting these young girls, grooming them, and sending them out and teaching them how to become spies. No, folks, what was going on is a lot of these women or young women that he was sending in were coming in from Eastern Europe. They were coming in already, coming in to do the spying, to do the work, to get intelligent information. This was a ring. They were taught overseas to come in here, and they were giving information, and they were being implemented. And there's even currently, right now, you would be surprised, but in Donald Trump's circle, that's another thing he's really worried about is a lot of the powerful men that are still currently might have wives, might have girlfriends, mistresses, lovers, still going back from that time that still are connected to the Kremlin, still are feeding information, and still are working from the inside.
His wife could be one of those people. I mean, we don't really know.
Yeah.
You go back and you look at Ivana's pedigree. She came from a family that was connected to the Czech, intelligence services when they were under the Soviet Union. Melania also has ties, or her family have ties to intelligence circles. Of course, a lot of people do in Russia, and so it's not that is
Well,
scandalous. But
but that's not even Eastern European part
mm,
of their intelligence service, and I know this very well because they tried to do this to me also, and part of my case, a lot of this was because my case was international in between. I was being followed all over the world,
yeah,
and there and
incredible.
what they do is they actually their women are this is it's not even so much prostitution. It's part of intelligence services that they are sent over. These are spies.
Yeah,
These are people that are really come over here. And you gotta understand, back in the 90s, most of these guys, like Donald Trump and all of his, Lutnick, Schmutnick, all of these guys, Epstein. I'm not talking about Epstein because he was a different cat, but most of these were being New York, California, Florida were flooded with Eastern European women at the time, and it was like a not so much as a fad, but they were like there was no background checks going on. They were no, I'm saying to you, so there was a lot of that going on, not only by the intelligence services, but I remember even a lot of like rich oligarchs that were
mm,
criminals that would do that. Like, but they would have prostitution services and force women to do that by going in and working and getting information, taking pictures, blackmailing and doing it. But intelligence services also through the 90s, and that's why the infiltration into Trump world and into even a lot of Democrats, happened till this day, and that's why this is, like we say, the biggest cover up in United States history,
it's so
maybe the
true.
world.
This because you're so what you're pointing to is this pipeline of women that came through using the O1 visa, the Genius visa, which was given to
Yes,
anybody who was a model, international model, and could say that they were special. Now,
that's right.
who had modeling agencies? The modeling agencies were owned by Epstein. Modeling agencies were owned by Trump. Were owned by Casablancas. Were owned by the
Yes,
Ford, by Eileen
yes,
Ford.
yes, yes.
These so. No surprise that Brunel, which is really the Epstein's agency, undercover. Did you know this E equals MC2 is Epstein basically, and the MC2 is the name of the model agency, but it was his way of saying E equals, so Epstein
Equals
equals
it, right, right.
MC2. So it was his modeling agency, and he brought all these people in. Two of them, Dasha and Ilana, I don't remember the last names, landed up working for Epstein. These were sponsored in one case by the other Russian contact that Epstein had, Bjorkin, I think is his name, or Bjorkus something, and they were sponsored to get this O1 visa from this person who was a deputy in the Putin regime, a deputy secretary in the Putin regime, and these women were trained in one case in the GRU sort of international school that
Oh,
came out of
absolutely.
these was full-on spies, and they were working for Epstein, who obviously knew that there was spies. It's question, so was he one? Makes you think that, um, and the fact that he was surrounded by all these women that he didn't have a need for. I mean, he wasn't particularly sexual in that way with these women. So a lot of the questions that we have is why have a $16 million modeling agency that is losing money? What's the point behind that? Well, the point is to
It's
compromise people, to spy on people, to get information on people. That's really what they were doing.
it's a net. It's a lost leader, as you call it sometimes in
Yeah,
business, to attract the real. What you were really using is for, and that's why you had, this. If you look back in those days, you would have the more power you had, the more money you had. Is when you would walk into a club or you'd walk into these events, you had like 10 models with you. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying to you? One
exactly.
guy with 10, 15 models, and you would sit at a table and get champagne, and and that was the privilege, and that's how they showed their strength. And unfortunately, like you said, back in those days, and I remember them very well because those were the days where I was living through Soviet Union, watching the collapse of the Soviet Union, watching all of this entity coming through here, and I write about it in my book. But a lot of the women, and some of them, like you said, were spies, were trained by the GRU and other intelligence, Latvia, Poland. I mean,
Checks.
all of the Czechs, all these Eastern European countries were sending in, but also a lot of these women were being trafficked and being forced into, and given this information through the criminal activity. So you had a lot of that intertwining into because what brings all of this together is one thing: power and money,
Yeah, and
and
deception. And
and
deception
deception
and
and
actually,
deception. Thank
yeah,
you. Yeah, the three things. Thank you, Zev.
yeah.
And that's what brought these two worlds together. And they were so rich and so powerful, and you could see the pictures. They never think they could get away with. They never think they could get caught or get or have problems because there's nobody hired them until there's somebody hired them,
Yeah.
and that's what we're seeing play out right now.
It's so interesting what you're saying and so relevant because imagine having a inside source inside of some of these people's homes. Imagine having an inside source inside Branson's home, so you know exactly what he's doing, who he's doing business with, what he, you know, what his proclivities are, things that might embarrass him, things that might embarrass his wife if he was ever caught. These are, you know, these are the kinds of ways that they think, and so. Some of these women were trafficked. You point that out correctly. Some of these women were spies, and some of them were underage in order to compromise people like Andrew and company. And that is why they're all different types of people. This was not just a child trafficking thing, as some people expect. It was, you know, it was much more than that. It was also aspiring and a human trafficking ring for adults.
And some of it, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
and
okay,
most importantly, not to the, I mean, and a lot of it was just plain sick perversion. A
right.
lot of it was just sick, a lot of these girls, because we're talking about the corruption, the money, the espionage, and all of this, the power, but a lot of it also had to do with these poor young girls that came up from very underprivileged families, that didn't have a chance, that really were being used and as tools by perverted, powerful men, besides everything else, because to so that's, never need to forget
Yeah,
that.
look, I mean, the survivors are real. There are real victims here. There's a lot of terrible things that happened amongst this group, as you point out. A lot of violent sex, a lot of trafficking against their will. A lot of people who came to America thinking that they were going to be models and landed up being trafficked for
A
large amounts of
lot.
money to powerful women, to powerful men, and there were terrible things were done to them. There's no denying that. It was just a horrific network. And the reasons they were doing it was for, as you point out, exactly those things: power and money. This was an opportunity for the clients of Jeffrey Epstein to gain a lot of power, and they've used that power repeatedly against the American people. And that's the other victims of the story, is the victims of the financial crimes, the people who lost their homes in 2008, the people who lost their
Yep.
homes in other crises along the way. Those are actual victims of Jeffrey Epstein as well. These are people of this network as well. These are people who manipulated the stock markets, who crashed the stock markets, who did pump and dumps and had all the inside knowledge to then be ready to pick up the distressed assets at pennies on the dollar, and then were able to even take advantage of all the bailouts that the U.S. government provided. Every time there was a bailout, the first people in line were the same people who were actually committing the crisis in the first place, who actually crashed these markets.
Oh,
So there's a lot of
absolutely.
victims.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, Epstein, I call him the Mark Rich of the 2000s, what Mark Rich were the 80s and 90s. I mean, they're power players. They're called power players. They get themselves into a position because sometimes in their life, and a lot of them usually, it's because of some crazy things where they, are at the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right, however you want to look at it. And they're put, just like when you say, what is his relationship with Waxner? It could be someplace. So I know so many people that became very powerful and rich, going back to like the Soviet Union, because they were at a home and they saw something, and they had something on this person, and this person had to get more, they did something with this person, or they, and that little compromise basically that gets buried, that takes this other person to the next level. I've seen, some incredible con men, to be able just to get into some of these rich, influential people, and then have them persuade them, taking them around, and then do their thing. So I could tell you that this was a time where, especially during the fall of the Soviet Union, and that's why me and Zev talk about it a lot in America, the 90s was an extremely important time, because while America was jumping up and the world was so happy with the Soviet Union being in this falling apart, people like Vladimir Putin people like the old guard, the KGB, they were working hard. They were continuously. They never stopped. And part of what it was is the interaction, the infiltration into the world, but mostly into the United States by spreading the wealth, the money, investing, and by bringing in like the spies, the women, and the professionals and everything to be able to intertwine. And you're seeing the same thing exactly play out right now. What are you seeing? You're seeing basically where right now Donald Trump, his administration is doing everything they can what to basically take you back to the 90s. Because if you remember in the 90s, when the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was a pariah. Nobody wanted to touch it. Why? How they get back into the world stage is America brought them back in because we made deals. We allowed them to keep certain nuclear weapons. They gave up. Remember, and we brought them back in. We allowed them to start rebuilding. And to the same thing is happening right now. Russia is in distress. Their economy is falling apart. This war was something that's taking them down the hill. And right now they're like literally day to day. And what do they need? Now that's why they're using all of this compromise besides everything else to push onto Donald Trump and to bring him back into the world stage. And that's why it's like, history repeats itself from back in the 90s. Now we're looking at 30 years later, almost 40 years later, these same players, same people. And like you said, Zev, in between the 2008, the mortgage fraud, the so many stock manipulation. If you go take a look, if you really start unwinding the web and take a look at how that's why the Epstein files are so powerful
Yeah.
because it's not just a perversion. It's not, it's going back decades of unwinding of how some of these world collapses from your stock markets to your, bank, and not just here in the United States, all over the world. Some of the stuff that you might have not even heard, the oil manipulation prices going up and all of that. And if you'll take a look at where the money goes and you start connecting, as we always say, follow the money, you're going to start seeing the same names start popping up.
I'm doing that in the greatest heist. The next few chapters will get to exactly that, to the exact way that Jeffrey Epstein was able to collapse the market in 2008. The actual details of that crash, and it's so easy to see in hindsight, but no one's ever reported it. No one's ever really dug into the mechanisms that he and Wexner and Jamie Dimon all were aware of and built in order to collapse that market at just the time that they needed it. Why? So they could take advantage of the collapse. They could then position themselves to be perfectly advantageous there. Actually, we should leave with just one quick. I want to hear from your fundraising as well, but I also want to talk about Bill Clinton's in these photos. We're not running away from Democrats. We'll talk about the Democrats that are involved here as well.
Absolutely.
I have no problem showing these or any other photos involving Democrats. It certainly was the target of Jeffrey Epstein's influence operation. As far as I understood it from Ari Ben Menashe, was to get the Clinton administration to not make a peace deal with between Israel and the Palestinians. And Jeffrey Epstein was at the White House 17 times with Bill Clinton, and obviously Bill Clinton was a friend up until a certain point. And I think that point was probably the Monica Lewinsky scandal when that sort of fell apart. And who knows whether Monica and all of that was also another
I
big
mean,
spy op, could be.
listen, anything could be. I don't think Monaco is fine. I'll just tell you this one. Look, this I said from what I don't care, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Black, White, Spanish, Chinese, French, Japanese. I don't care who. If somebody was involved in pedophilia or somebody was involved with trafficking underage girls, abusing women, or any part of this, they need to go down. And I've never defended Bill Clinton. You know what I'm saying to you? Bill Clinton, yes, he could have done a lot of great things as the president of the United States, and we could have been living through a great time and era. That does not excuse him from what he did with Monica Lewinsky in the White House. That was not something that's even excusable today. The fact that people are just forgetting about it. Listen, Bill Clinton ran with that crowd. That's why you see him all the time. That's why you see him all over the pictures. That's why you see him hanging out with Epstein. Bill Clinton is not stupid. Bill Clinton was not dumb. Bill Clinton had a Secret Service with him all the time that would give him, before he would go meet somebody, they would give him a dossier. So Bill Clinton knew who Epstein was. He knew who he was associated. The reason why Bill Clinton, the reason why Woody Allen, the reason why all of Bill Gates, the reason why Trump and all of these people hung out with Epstein is because of the females. Because he was the guy that had the connection. He was the party guy. He was the guy that would take you and bring and when the guy where you could go and do things, and it was like that private club.
It was a
Like you
private
heard
club. Exactly. It was like a little country
exactly,
club for men. They could go in,
exactly.
They could get what they needed done. No one would ever know. He would,
It,
promise that he
it
would never
was right.
tell. Meanwhile, there were cameras rolling probably,
Right,
and
and it was just it wasn't even just the pedophile. They all were. I would guarantee you, they would meet there. It was like a common thing of a like that, but it was more. They would be doing business at the same time. That's the sick part. This is why this is all intertwines together, because these are people that were meeting at these islands, meeting at these events, meeting at these private clubs, because they would also conduct international big business, make deals while they're doing this sick perverted stuff.
this is the thing. This is why this network works, because they all have these secrets. They all have secrets that they hold because they all hold secrets about each other. And they were able to keep the secret for a long time until now. Lev, I know you got to run and I've got to do that too, but I want to hear from you about your fundraiser that you've been doing. It's going extraordinarily well. I think I saw yesterday about $60,000, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken. You're
yeah.
raising funds to go travel around the country and do important work about getting the message to Americans. Tell everyone about your
Zev,
GoDaddy campaign.
Zev, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a GoFundMe campaign that we set up, and phase one is basically to hire. We got two things going on at the same time. So the GoFundMe is basically to be able to raise enough money, which is 150,000. That is our goal for phase one to be, and we got about 60,000 already raised. We have another 90 to go to be able to get the professionals that we need to organize, put together the strategical, from lawyers to bookers to be able, so we could go on road and be able to do it, probably because can't do this on a string budget, can't be a one-man team.
No.
And with that phase one, they are also organize and structure the proper foundation to be able to donate, so it's not going to be GoFundMe's. So that's why this is just the first stage. We're also simultaneously have it's called LEV PTTP at proton.me. It's a volunteer hotline for those of you that want to have skills or can't contribute or can and want to be able to help in any way when we come to your state, city, or town, or you have skills that you could help. Please email, give us the information. We have already a group of over 70 volunteers that have joined in our grassroots. We have over 60,000 raised. God bless for all of you that have done it. For those that haven't yet, please join us because come January, February, Zev, we're going to be doing a lot of these interviews with me on the road and a lot of these races because the number one thing right now is to get back the House and the Senate, because the midterms is the number one goal right now.
I think it's brilliant, and I think this next elections, I've been saying it for a bit now, could be the presidential election for Democrats. People have to realize that whatever happens after this election, depending on the result, could mean a Democratic House. It could mean a Democratic leaning, almost to 58, 59 seats in the Senate. Maybe that's very close to impeachment and conviction territory, and that means the next Speaker of the House could be the next President of the House. I think it's why Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing the things she's doing right now. But I just want to commend you,
Absolutely.
Lev, on the incredible work you're doing. Lev is one of a kind. We don't get someone
Thank
who's
you.
been inside the Trump world as closely as Lev has, who saw the light, who changed his opinions about things, who really changed his whole perspective, and he's changed his network, changed his friends, changed a lot of his life path in order to be here to fight the good fight for the good of America and the freedom that we have in America. So my commendation to you is to please go and support Lev, whether it's through his new initiatives at GoFundMe or at Lev Remembers. Become a paid subscriber, support this man. He's doing incredible work, and there's no one else who can do the stuff that he's doing in terms of giving us insight into what is happening inside the Trump White House and how we can defeat it. So thanks, Lev. Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Zev, thank you so much. And everybody make sure subscribe. We need more independent journalists like Zev, because he's been talking about this Epstein story since 2019. Nobody was talking about the stuff he's breaking on here. Make sure subscribe. We need more Zevs. Zevs. Thank you,
Anyone with
everybody.
Evs. You're awesome, Lev. Parnas,
Take care,
thank you for
brother.
being here on our breaking news coverage, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for
Take
being
care.
here, everybody.
These photos were basically in the possession of the Epstein estate. And so that includes pictures that maybe were sent to Epstein. Perhaps he took himself. We know there's some that he took himself that others took, but they were in his possession. And so that is what's important. And obviously, there are photos of powerful men and folks that we want to have an opportunity to speak with and ask questions of. The thing right now that's the most important is there is one man who has the power to release the files and get to the truth and bring justice to the survivors, and that's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump right now needs to release the files to the American public so that the truth can come out and we can actually get some sense of justice for the survivors.
So what's your plan going to be if the Trump administration doesn't?
What do you think the significance of these photos is? Because some of these are folks we already knew had associations with Jeffrey Epstein.
I think anything that we release is significant. I think people should be able to make judgments on their own as to what they see in these photos. For us, this is about transparency. If we receive information or pictures or anything else, videos that we put out last week, and I think it's important to note that it's been oversight Democrats that have fought every single time to release all this information. And there is a White House cover-up happening right now in not releasing these files. That needs to end. There are women who were raped when they were children who just want justice. Let's release the files immediately.
What do you think is going to happen on the 19th? You know, they're supposed to put out all these files on the 19th. Do you think we're going to get everything they need? Do you think it's going to be satisfactory?
I think that the Justice Department needs to put out the files today. What happens on the 19th, I'm hopeful they put everything out. It shouldn't be heavily redacted. The files shouldn't be tampered with. We should get the full production. There are hundreds and hundreds of FBI agents that have worked on putting these files together. They know what's in them. The president himself is aware of what's in these files. They tried to stop the release. We forced the action in Congress. It's time to release the files.
You skeptical we get
What's your
everything?
plan going to be on the 19th, though, if the DOJ does not release these